Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Happiness Conversations. It's the 17th edition, and there is Vani. Mom, can you just wave your hand? Yeah, that's Vani. And my name is Avis. We are the Happiness Valas, and we are happy to welcome you to this edition of Happiness Conversations. Vani and I have a fascinating, life-changing experience that we're going through. You can look us up to know more about our journey by Googling us. Please Google HAPPYW A HAPPYNESS Happiness Walas, happiness with a Y. Please Google us. Our life's purpose, we believe, Vani and I, is to inspire happiness. And we're doing that in many ways. I'll tell you how. But just to give you an overview, we are going through a crippling bankruptcy for the last 13 years. This essentially means that for long spells of time in this period, we have been dealing with worklessness and pennilessness. So materially, it's been a very, very dark phase for us in our life. So while we've been dealing with this crisis, so in a way you can even say that we've been in quarantine for the last 13 years. We've been quarantined socially, quarantined professionally, and quarantined financially. And when you go through a difficult time, you feel that something is wrong with you. You feel that the whole world has disowned you. You feel that there is only darkness that you are having to deal with, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We went through all that in this time, only to discover that it is possible to train your mind to be non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering. We told ourselves, Vani and I, that the way to deal with this crisis is not to give up on life, but to give into it, to flow with it. जिंदगी के साथ कदम मिला के जिंदगी के साथ चलना है. That is what we learned, and we learned that by training ourselves to be non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering. So when you don't pick up a worry when it arises, you make the worry powerless. When you realize that you only have a right to your actions and you don't have a right to the outcomes, to the results, then you realize that you can be non-frustrated. Despite all the setbacks, you can be non-frustrated. When you realize that there is no point in asking these questions, why me? When we go through a problem, we all ask this question, why me? मेरे साथ ये क्यों हो रहा है? Why is it happening to me? எனக்கு ஏன் இந்த விஷயம் ஆகுது? எனக்கு எதுக்கு இந்த பிரச்சனை? So this why me question, if we drop these questions, then we can be non-suffering. So Vani and I learned the art of being non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering. And through that, we learned to be happy despite our circumstances. That's why we call ourselves the Happiness Valas. We've learned the simplest secret to living life intelligently, which is to be happy despite our circumstances. And we now consider it our life's purpose to inspire happiness. And we decided, therefore, that while success is elusive and it's not coming to us in the fashion in which we want it to come to us, that is worldly success, I'm defining it, which is the ability to earn an income, the ability to repay our debt, the ability to climb out of this dark space that we have fallen into. Since that success is not happening, we asked ourselves, how can we be useful? And so in 2014, somewhere midway through this 13-year journey, we discussed among ourselves, had deep, honest conversations with ourselves, and I decided to write a book. That book, Fall Like a Rose Petal, was released in 2014. I'm going to throw up that slide just for you to see the cover of the book. 2014, Fall Like a Rose Petal came out, and the Tamil translation to this book, Udirum Roja Idar Pola, came out in 2019. Both books are available on Amazon, and both talk about the lessons that we have learned while learning to live without money. And the primary lesson has been how to be happy and content with life with what you have got with you. So having done that, we also retooled our business. We now run a small boutique consulting firm where we distill lessons on life and happiness from human experiences, from human stories, and share them among managers, inspiring them to high performance. We also run 3 conversations across Chennai. These used to be live conversations, but these after the COVID story kind of unfolded, these conversations have now come onto Zoom. We have seamlessly been offering these conversations on Zoom. These are live, reflective, non-commercial conversations. 2 of them are hosted by the Odissi Bookstore. Bliss Catchers is one of them. It happens on the last Saturday of a month. And the second conversation is hosted by the Madras Management Association, which is called The Uncommon Leader. And this is the third in the series, the Happiness Conversations, the one that you are joining us today for. And this too is hosted on a Saturday of the month. And both Bliss Catchers and Happiness Conversations are supported by Odissi. Odissi, the bookstore in Chennai, who have been with us in this journey for the last 5 years. They've given us their space. They've supported with sponsoring this series. And although we are on Zoom, I'd like to appreciate and thank them for their continued support for what Vani and I are doing. All 3 conversations, Bliss Catchers, Happiness Conversations, and Uncommon Leader, are centered around the theme of exploring how people have understood the value of happiness and how they have actually embraced it and how they have learned to live a life of meaning, live a life of purpose, and live a life of giving. So that's the central idea of all conversations, is to explore the theme of happiness. In introducing today's session, what I'm actually going to do is to lean on a learning that Vani and I have had personally in life. You see, just as I was telling you briefly about our story, many times you may have noticed that life will put you in a very dark space. You will realize that everything that you stood for, that you believed in, is being challenged. You may even look up at the sky and say, is there a God? Is there a point in following a certain religion? Or is there a point in following a certain ritualistic practice? Or is there a point in even being basically good, hardworking, and honest in your life? And then you will realize that when you look around, that you're not alone. You're not the only one to feel like that. Everyone who's journeyed through life on this planet has had to go through that dark space. And everyone emerges through that darkness and pain to discover light from within themselves, to discover grace, and to realize that it is possible to be happy despite your circumstances. Javed Akhtar says this so beautifully in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. He's one of our favorite poets and lyricists. He says, "ये जो गहरे सन्नाटे हैं, वक्त ने सबको ही बांटे हैं. थोड़ा गम है सबका किस्सा, थोड़ी धूप है सबका हिस्सा. आंख तेरी बेकार ही नम है, हर पल एक नया मौसम है. क्यों तू ऐसे पलक होता है, दिल आखिर तू क्यों रोता है?" So he celebrates the suchness of life in this poem. He says that these dark, expansive, deep silences are part of everyone's life, and everyone has been distributed an equal measure of it by time. Everyone has a story of pain. Everyone has their spot in sunshine. He says, why are your eyes moist? Why are you tearing up? Every moment holds a new season. Embrace that moment. Don't squander it away. Dil aakhir, tu kyun rota hai? Oh heart, why do you pine? Why do you cry? That's what he says. So the celebration of suchness of life is what life is all about. We have to all accept the fact that we have to go through darkness and pain to find meaning, purpose, and happiness, just as our guest this evening, Ghazal Vaina, has done. We're going to be talking to her in just a wee bit, but that's really what the conversation series, Happiness Conversations, is all about. It's about reminding people that you have one life, learn to live it in a non-worrying, non-frustrated, non-suffering way. Learn to be happy with what is. जो है उसमें ही अपनी खुशी ढूंढो. जो है எது இருக்கோ அதை வச்சுக்கிட்டே சந்தோஷமா இருக்க வாழ கத்துக்கங்க. That's what this series is all about. The format we have is that Vani and I will be in conversation with Ghazal all the way till 8:29, and we always start and finish on time, so you can expect this conversation to be over at 8:29 sharp. And as we go through it, I want you to remember a few guidelines, a few hygiene rules. We are recording this conversation, so we'll greatly appreciate if you keep your videos turned off, so it allows us bandwidth to record the conversation. At the end of the conversation, I'll request all of you to turn on your videos, and we can take some screenshots just to capture the moment and to celebrate the fact that we were all together this evening. All your audios will be on mute all through the conversation. This event does not have an audience Q&A format, but of course, you may leave your comments, reactions in the chat box, and they'll come to us, and we'll take a look at them after the conversation. I want you to know that we have tested our devices for audio and video, and if you are experiencing any audio or video disturbance at your end, it could be a Zoom issue, and it can be sorted out on its own. If you leave it alone for a couple of minutes, it should come back on. If we have a power outage or an internet outage at our end, please bear with us. We do have a generator backup in this building, as well as at Ghazal's end. And so we should all be back into the conversation in a couple of minutes. So the maximum downtime would be a couple of minutes. Please bear with us should that eventuality arise. I do want you also to know that this is a conversation that is a conversation, and it is not a talk. It's not a panel discussion. It's not a speech. So you will find that Vani, me, and Ghazal are going to be sharing our life experiences and our learnings. Some of them may be relevant to you, and some of them may not be. So you may pick up what is relevant to you, and that's the beauty of this entire format, that it allows each one to take away what is relevant, what is meaningful to them. You know, life happens to all of us differently, but we all have similar lessons from our experiences, and that's what we are celebrating here. I'm happy now to introduce Ghazal to all of you. For those of you who don't know her, we ourselves met Ghazal only in October last year, and that was at a conversation that we were hosting, where Ghazal was a member in the audience. Vani and I were talking about our own journey from being failed entrepreneurs to being the happiness wallas that we are today. We were talking about how to deal with this big F word in our life, which is failure. And at the end of the conversation, Ghazal walked up to us and said how much she was moved by the event, and she talked to us about herself and told us about her organization Milap, which is an organization that supports people, non-custodial parents primarily. And we knew intuitively that there may be a story here worth exploring. In fact, all of us have stories, right? And so we intuitively felt Ghazal's story there. But we left it there. We connected on Facebook, and a few weeks later, we saw a post by Ghazal saying she was going to New Delhi to deliver a talk to address an audience on how, through darkness and pain, she found her life's purpose. And I looked up at Vani and I said, "Hey, Mom, I think we should connect with Ghazal. We should hear her story." And so we met for coffee with Ghazal, and what a fascinating story of facing life strongly. What a fascinating story of going through upheavals stoically. That is the story that we are here to explore today. In her mid 30s, when she was in her mid 30s around 2013, is when Ghazal found herself in a dark place in life. She found that she had been putting up with a abusive and a violent marriage for 18 years. And when she tried to walk out of it, she was denied access to her only child, her son. And she came out with no money, with her self-esteem in tatters, with a lot of fear, with a lot of apprehension, with a lot of pain. And she didn't know where to start. Her family and her immediate circle of friends held her hand, and her spiritual guides led her onward. But it was her journey, her walking from a position of complete hopelessness to serving her immediate circle of influence wholesomely, selflessly. That is what fascinated us. That here's a lady who had every reason to be unhappy, but who chose to walk in the direction of happiness, in the direction of grace, and to be able to serve other people through the two organizations that she set up, Bodhi, which is a support group for people going through painful separations and messy divorces, and Milap, which is for now an organization supporting non-custodial parents. All this when she herself was going through a messy divorce, and all this when she herself continues to be estranged from her now adult son. So that's her amazing journey. That's the story of the amazing, courageous Ghazal Raina that we're going to explore today. So on that note, thank you, Ghazal, for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here, and we are finally here. Though we fixed this date months back, we're finally here on the 27th of June. So I'll now invite you to join the conversation, and I leave the floor to Vani to get things started.
Yeah, thank you, Avis, and really very happy and very privileged to be here because I've heard a lot. You both of you cover some really inspiring people, so I'm very proud to feature here, and a lot of friends and family who are there on the call. Thank you so much.
Ghazal, welcome to today's evening. The first thing that struck me was when I met you was your name. Such a beautiful name, Ghazal. And, but when I heard your story, the first thing that struck me was that, 18 years of marriage, most of this has been marred, a majority of it was marred by, violence and domestic abuse. You were really young, Ghazal. It must have been difficult on you. And how did you pull through? I mean, tell us something about your early years, what you went through, your relationships.
Right. So you rightly said I was very young when I decided to get married. It was a choice that I had made, and I know that my family was not very happy with that. When your 19-year-old wants to get married, and just in the middle of her college degree, wants to just get married and take off. So it was a difficult decision, and looking back at that decision, although we are here to talk about my journey, I would also say that I don't have any regrets at that decision. I just want to say that upfront. But I think it was something just at that point seemed right to me, and I thought I had met the person of my dreams, and I started this my new life. it had become very inherent to the marriage, the violence and the abuse. And I don't know when I started understanding that all of that was normal. I didn't, I thought it would be very unfair to go back and tell my family and the world that I'm facing this and I've taken this decision. How do I go back and say that I made a mistake? And I think that was primarily the reason why I continued in that marriage and went on. So we had a life in the army, and we moved from one place to another. And through those experiences, I think what happened was that my own sense of self took a large beating, because my early years of growing up were in that marriage. I understood whatever messages and language came from that marriage or my ex-husband to be what I was. So that is why it took me such a long time to understand that some of these things were really, really hurting myself and my personality.
Did you at that time? I'll just ask a question, Mom. And did you at that time feel that you were probably denying the existence of a problem?
Oh yes. So I think I lived in denial for a long time, because I had convinced myself by hearing those messages coming from my partner, which said that this is normal in a marriage. Violence is normal, abuse is normal, and it is part of love. And it has taken me a long time to understand that that was not normal.
Did you initially think it was because of something, maybe a job pressure or something that was causing that?
Yes, I always attributed it to something external. I didn't even attribute it to the marriage itself, to the relationship. I just thought it was pressure that was making him do that, but he really loves me. You know, we all say that you go through the abuse and you go through the violence, but you believe that there is love, and then that takes over everything else. So yeah, you're right. So there were a lot of episodes where I believed that yes, there is love, and then everything else is fair.
You know, Ghazal, I've always thought of this, that, you know, when people may be coming and asking you now that why did you keep quiet for so long? You could have gone and told somebody, or, you know, confided in someone. But I've always realized that when you're going through something, you don't realize the extent of what you're going through. It's only later when you sit back and you reflect upon what you've gone through that you kind of realize that, oh, I went through all this. So, you know, and I think also when we are very young, we kind of want to fit into what we call, you know, what society defines as normal. You know, we all want to be seen as normal people with, you know, like happy marriages and, you know, a nice family and all of that. And we don't realize, like you said, you didn't realize, you did not think that this violence was inherent to the relationship. And, you know, I don't know if you remember, but when I saw this movie Thappad, I sent you a message saying, Ghazal, you know, I was so disturbed after seeing that film, and I kept thinking about you and your experience. Because the character in that film says that she actually seeks divorce, you know, on the basis of a slap. Husband slaps her at a party, and she says that I want a divorce. And people are telling her that baat ek thappad ki to hai. Why are you, you know, taking it to such an extreme? And she says the problem is that violence is normalized. You know, violence is, you're told that ye sab hota hai, and you sort of accept that this is part of how people live. So, you know, I guess, you know, what you went through was probably a very difficult time, but you were so young and you didn't know that you had a voice and you could actually choose a life for yourself. So, you know, I really think that, you know, now thinking back, you might say that maybe you could have done things differently, but that comes with age and maturity.
Yeah, so strangely, Vani, after all these years, it's been 7 years since I got separated and divorced. A year and
Yeah.
a half back, I was at an event in Chennai, which is called Taboo,
Ha.
which basically captures a lot of voices about basic topics which are taboo people don't talk about. And I was there to talk about domestic violence. And I can't tell you how unnerving it was for me to say yes to that event, to go up on stage and speak. Although I was writing about what had happened with me, and I was writing about divorce, coping up with divorce and estrangement. But I think that was the point where I completely accepted the fact that what was happening with me, the way it had shaped my entire personality, the way it had crushed my self confidence, to accept that while I had the courage to stand up for the world or to stand up for somebody else's wrong, I had no courage to accept that this was happening to me. So somewhere I think we lack the courage to, call out what is not right for us. And
So true, so true.
it's also the psychology of people who are in a domestic, in a marriage which is very violent, where you believe that your entire identity is shaped around that relationship, or you're told it's shaped around the relationship and the marriage, and anything outside of it, you're going to be a big failure. So, and you choose to believe it. So that's the sort of brainwashing that happens.
Yeah,
So
you want to just be normal.
in a way, what happens is, in any problem in life, we the first stage is denial, and denial is often seen as a very aggressive state. But no, in many cases, it is almost always very subtle, and nobody wants to stand up and say that I'm seeing this reality and it's scaring me. Nobody wants to be there. Or if dealing with the perpetrator of violence or abuse, you want to give that person space, or you want to try and see things from their point of view. And nobody wants to be rabid, aggressive, whistle blowing all the time. So therefore, the perpetrators get stronger and stronger, and the denial continues to endure. This happens in almost all cases, not just in domestic abuse, but even when you are in the throes of a ruinous habit, or when you are in a messy financial situation that you are responsible for, like the way we were. But we've also learned, Ghazal, that we all go through life experiences in certain tenures. There is a tenure for every life experience. We're all product of the time that we go through. So unless there is a inflection point, unless there is a turning point, unless you are reaching that end of that tenure of time, you never say enough is enough. So I'd like to ask you, at what point in your journey did you say to yourself that enough is enough? Was there an incident that turned out to be the life-changing for you in terms of helping you take a decision to move out of your marriage?
Mm. I think the transition happened when I hit my 30s. That is a time when I started to understand and look for things that made me really happy. Not that the family didn't. I mean, I had a son who I was very fond of, and I had a family life. But I started discovering a lot of other aspects of my personality. I had I had taken the effort to complete my education, because when I got married, I was in the final year of my BA. I did my MA. I did my BEd. Um, I had also chanced upon an opportunity to volunteer at a school which was part of our unit. So basically, in the army, there are smaller schools and the establishments which are part of the welfare activities that they do. And I remember the commanding officer's wife was the school principal, and she said, I'm finding it difficult to, I see all these children who don't have a school to go to. This was Udhampur in J&K. And I feel very sad that these children are losing out on education. I want to start a school. Is there anybody who will help me run the school? And with absolutely no background in education, I just put up my hand and I said, I will. So it shocked everybody, including my own self. But that has started my foray into teaching. And I realized this is where I want to be. This is really what I love to do. I went on to do my B.Ed in Udhampur. After that, of course, there was no looking back. I had found my passion, which was to be with children and teach. As I set out my journey to be a teacher, I discovered a lot of other facets to my personality. So the interesting thing was that when I was an army officer's wife, I rarely heard people call me by my name.
Wow. Okay.
It was Mrs. So-and-so, and there was a point of time a friend joked, said that, I've been calling you Ghazal for a long time, you didn't respond. And I realized that I had just stopped responding to that name. It was always as so-and-so's wife, or, so-and-so's partner. And that realization came when I started working. I was very lucky to find schools where there was a lot of liberty given to creating learning experiences which were out of the box for children. And I think that's where I discovered that I love to really innovate when it comes to teaching children. When all of these things happened, I think there was a transition happening in my marriage as well. Although I was not upfront about it, because I never had the guts and the courage to say that, but I realized that I wasn't happy deep down. And because of that, either I was, moving very gradually, either getting lost in work, or getting lost in some other activity, or getting lost in gravitating to some choices which would, make me shut down my ears and eyes towards addressing the main problem in my marriage. But I think that's the time when things started really spiraling towards the worst, even in terms of my ex-partner's own professional life. And I thought it's all a mix of that cocktail which is creating these issues. But I think that is a time when there were a lot of not so pleasant incidents at home, which made me think about enough is enough. I need to move out. And although it was really, really nerve-wracking, but I think that was the time, 2013 was the time when it finally happened.
So it kind of grew on you, the decision, and it kind of reached a culmination around 2013, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And what I'm picking up is two strands of learning here. One is that to do your BA, to do your MA, and then your B.Ed during the course of this tumultuous marriage says a lot about your resilience, and it's life's way of giving you something to hang on to when you knowing that you will need it at some time. So it's amazing that you went through that journey. Many people may have given up. The other strand of learning is that, picking up on what I was saying earlier, everything happens in its own time and at its own pace. Not every decision in life needs to be an epochal one, a momentous one that is taken on the spur of a moment. I think you let it grow. In your case, it was a case of identity being, kind of revalidated with your role as a teacher versus the role of being so-and-so's wife, which kind of reminded you time and again that you were so-and-so's wife stuck in a very abusive, violent relationship. And so as it grew on you that you had the potential to be a teacher, you let it evolve. And that finally in 2013 led to that point where you said, enough is enough. Someone way back told me this, and I'll share it here. "Ewe zindagi kamal ki cheez hai. Yahan samay se pehle aur kismat se zyada kisi ko na kuch mila hai, na kuch milega." So you will never get anything ahead of time or more than what you need, what is meant for you. Such is life. And so If we ask, why did this awakening not come earlier? Why did this realization not happen to you when you were younger? What were you doing? I think that these questions can be asked, but the way life operates is that these things happen over a period of time, and so that's what I'm picking up from your answer. I'll let Vani take the next one forward.
Yeah, Ghazal, I have this question for you. I think more than taking a decision to actually separate or seek a divorce, I think sticking to that decision is very difficult. You can say in a moment, in a huff, that I would like a divorce, but then sticking to that decision is very difficult. And how did you do that? Did you have any support system? It's very important to have a support system. So did you have like friends, or did you have like family who you could fall back on and who you could talk to about your issues?
Yeah. So while you realize that the marriage is not a healthy one, while you realize you have issues, but I like to also say that it is very, very tough to break the marriage.
Yes.
Despite all of what you go through, and I've interacted with a lot of people, other people, despite the reality of the unhappiness as well as the unhealthiness of our marriages, it's very tough to give up on it. But I think I had reached a stage when I knew that the marriage is not going to continue on. And while I knew that my family was there with me, standing like a rock pillar of support, I had some friends who were there with me all throughout. But I also realized over a period of time that you have to go through this alone. I think I went through a time when of complete utter sleeplessness for maybe months. I mean, if you look at me, you probably won't agree, or you won't believe that this is somebody who will get scared of being alone. But I had this tiny little house which was in an area of Alsur in Bangalore. And it was much later when people told me, it's like the underbelly of Alsur, and at raat ko mat nikalna, wahan pe वैसे भी people go around with knives, and there are a lot of murders, etc. that happen. But then that is where I had found some support, and that is where I was living, and it was close to my work. But in that tiny little house with a person of my size, I used to lock each and every door and window, including that bedroom that I had, just to feel safe and secure. So while it had nothing to do with physical safety, but it had everything to do with feeling alone in your head. So I had everybody around me, and I knew that there were people on calls. I remember my sister-in-law told me that she's put a special ringtone for my phone, and even at 2 or 3 or 4, you just call me. So I had all the support in the world, but still at that same point, I knew that I realized at one point of time that you need to do this alone. And that's going to be the learning from it. So I mean, yeah, that's how I can sum it up, that feeling there.
Yeah, and I also feel that normally you wouldn't go to an extreme like seeking to break off a relationship unless it's come to that point, right? I mean, you've come to a point where you realize you cannot go on anymore, and that's where your support system actually becomes very important, because you start realizing that, hello, I am sane. There is nothing wrong with me. These things happen to people, and I'm okay. I'm normal. Because I feel that in our country particularly, there are two things that have a lot of taboo and stigma associated with them. One is a divorce, and no one would know this better than you. Because the minute you say you're a divorcee, you're looked down upon. You are like, oh, a lot of people go through difficulty. Why could you not, have gone through with what you were going through? Why could you not have made a compromise? Why could you not have stuck on in a marriage? So people, without understanding the background, make a lot of judgments on people who've gone through divorce. And that's something which has a lot of stigma attached to it. The other thing which has a lot of stigma and which Avis and I have really, been part of this, experienced it, is the fact that, when you go through a financial bankruptcy, then people are very quick to judge you, saying, but ye sab bolne ki kya zarurat hai? Why do you have to tell people that you don't have money? Oh, you're going through this time. You probably have not tried hard enough, or you probably are, rather stupid that you're going through this problem. So there's a lot of judgment around these two things, and I feel, with you and with us, we only understand each other better because we've been through this and we've seen the stigma and the judgment associated with these things. So, kudos to you that you just came out of it, and you had a good support system to run, go around you and to, take you along.
So, Vani, I just wanted to tell you, the strange thing is that while you have a unconditional support system for yourself, sometimes your biggest enemy is your own thinking and your own belief system about yourself. The biggest judgment that I used to make was coming from me. I went through a huge phase for many years, cursing myself for making some lousy choices, for making some decisions which I wasn't really happy and proud of. And I realized that was the only thing that led to the break of the marriage. So there's a lot of judgment that we pass on our own selves. We also say we didn't try enough. We also say that, was this really happening? I remember someone asked me when I had earlier tried to move out of the house, and when I had opened the secret about the domestic violence in my marriage to a friend, she said, "Are you sure it has happened?" And wow. I thought to myself, oh, did it happen? I actually took like 5 seconds to look back. And that was the level of confidence that I had on my own self, that I had to, if anybody could shake it, I would get shaken up. And I had to really think back on some of these events that had happened in my life. So I think it's not just about violence. It's not just about physically hurting someone. It's also a lot of crushing of their spirit and their ability to take right, to do the right or not the right thing. So it's a lot of factors which make people stay in these relationships, and then it has an effect much later on their lives as well. And it did for me as well. It took me a lot of unlearning to understand that it's not going to happen again.
So
yeah, this is so well said and so beautifully said by you.
I think you made two very powerful points, Ghazal. One is that you have to do this alone, and the second is that there will be times when you will be completely crushed, blown to smithereens. अपनी वजूद से हाथ धो बैठोगे, आपको अपने वजूद का एहसास नहीं रहेगा. You will not even know that you count in the system.
The self-esteem gets broken,
and that is part of life's process of making you stronger. Looking at you today, telling your story so stoically, even the part relating to the abuse and the violence, you're able to say it as a matter of fact. And that is part of the process of being strengthened by life. And one of the learnings that we have had is I've felt that sense of grief, that sense of guilt over having made lousy choices. And you're always wiser in hindsight. So when you look back and you say, what the hell, man, I made these choices. I mean, what was I thinking? That can leave you very devastated. So I've been there. And one of the learnings is that you set down these burdens, the burden of grief, the burden of guilt, the burden of self-accusation, the inability to look yourself in the mirror. You set down all these burdens and you say, it happens, man, shit happens. And let me see how we can move forward. So one of the critical factors, and that's my next question, is the ability to overcome fear and grief and become courageous. So starting off on your own without money, without an identity, required a lot of courage. Where did you get the courage from?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Um, I think starting off, of course, the courage was coming from my family and my friends around me. And but the problem was that the moment I was on my own, I was not able to bear the very thought of what had happened. I was continuously getting caught in the loop of overthinking. And I remember in the many months that I used to lie awake at home. There was this one night where I was actually, as you said in the beginning of the session, thinking, why me? Why has this happened to me? And what are you trying to test, God? I actually asked while I had tears running down my cheeks. I had to go to work the next day and I had not been able to sleep. And there was this moment where I had a voice that came and said, there is a reason behind all of this. And you have to look for the reason why this is happening to you. And at that precise moment, I was a bit shaken up. I wasn't able to understand, where is that voice coming in that small little house from? And I just happened to start surfing the net, as most of us do when we don't get sleep. And I happened to come across a video by Sister Shivani, who's the head of the Brahma Kumari sect. And that video, I wasn't searching for a topic. It just happened to be a video which talked about accepting that whatever is happening in your life is for your greater good. And I think from that day onwards, she became one of the reasons why I found my courage to start my day or go to work. And then every day there was a lesson from her videos that came to me, and that I think set off my journey into spirituality. And from there I started exploring and reading a lot of other spiritual leaders like Eckhart Tolle, Michael Singer, and those lessons or gurus actually put me on a path which told me that there is a higher purpose behind your pain. And that is what I started searching. Although, when we speak about it now, it sounds very simple. It wasn't. And I remember running around like a mad cat, from work to volunteering to doing a lot of things just to stay busy. This was a time when I made a move from the NGO that I was working with to the corporate sector, which I have to tell you, except for one friend, everybody said was a disastrous decision, because the corporate sector is ruthless. They are very target driven. They look at only getting work out of you, and you are not in a frame of mind to get into anything which is like this, and you don't know this works. But there was a voice in me which said, this is what you have to do right now. And believe me, at that point, my decision-making capabilities were really very poor, because of, I think, the way I had, been leading my life. It was always somebody else taking the decision for me. I think in my workplace, I remember I had always been a very honest and upfront person. And I told my new boss, saying, she was a lady, and I told her, she said, congratulations, you're hired. And I told her, I want to disclose that I'm going through a marital legal case. My divorce is underway. And what she told me, I remember till now verbatim. She looked at me and said, Ghazal, we don't care. And I looked at her, zapped, and she said, you can take this statement as you want. You can see it as the company really doesn't care about what's happening in your personal life. And two is you can think that we are kind and ruthless. But I can tell you that as long as you work and you work hard with a lot of dignity, there's nobody who can question you. So maybe this is a fresh start. It's a way for you to clear the whiteboard completely, make the board white, and then start. And I remember her words very well. And my work actually brought me very close to volunteering. I realized.
We'll come to your work, but I'm diving in to pick up a very significant learning before we lose it.
Sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the person who lay on her bed and unable to sleep, and was battling with the "why me" question, and was dealing with a lot of fear. And here is the person who makes the hard decision to move from NGO to corporate and is now facing life. And what she picked up from her instrument, in everyone's life, there is an instrument. Somebody comes into your life who gives you perspective, who gives you direction, because that's what you need. When the teacher arrives, the student is always ready, or when the student is ready, the teacher always arrives. So in her case, it was Sister Shivani from the Brahmakumari sect. And what she basically learned there is something that we all have to understand. You can transition from fear, which is a natural human response to the unknown. You can transition from fear to courage only through acceptance. And only because Ghazal accepted her reality, that she has to face this all by herself, however nerve-wracking it may be, however painful it may be, however fearful it may be, she decided to look her fears in the eye. So courage is not, as Vani and I have discovered, it's not the absence of fear. Courage is what fear delivers to you when you look your fear in the eye. When you're courageous, when you're fearless, it doesn't mean that your problems fade away. It doesn't mean that there is no pain. It means that you now have the ability to deal with your problems. You have the ability to withstand your pain and deal with your problems. And that's what she picked up in that conversation with her new employer, who told her that, Ghazal, we really don't care. So, and it gave her all the confidence. What she basically is saying is that she turned around and she faced life, and she's saying that I am Ghazal. I'm coming from a broken marriage. I'm coming from a violent relationship, and I am here to make a fresh start. Life as Zindagi, Gale Lagale. That's what she's saying. And that moment of acceptance leads to you turning fearless in the face of fear. It's a magical moment, and it's one of the ways in which life operates. So that's what I'm sensing, Ghazal, from what you just shared. So sorry for interrupting you, but I'll let Vani take this next point forward with you.
Yeah, Ghazal, when especially the kind of experiences that you were going through, is it right to say that everything that you kind of believed in and everything that you kind of you were dependent on somebody and something, and everything was being taken away from you, be it your relationship, be it your home, be it your child, everything was being taken away from you. And then, it was rather unjust and unfair, but then you actually overcame this and you rebuilt your life. So what were the feelings that you were going through, and how did you were talking about how you actually came into volunteering, and so if you could just take us through that journey, that would, especially coming from the background where everything that you believed in was taken away from you, and you were literally at ground zero.
So basically, I think, Ghazal, the point is from a sense of loss to rebuilding. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I would say you've summed it up very well. Everything that I believed in was proving to be wrong, proving to be false, I would say, not wrong. From whether it was my marriage, it was my relationship with my son, who suddenly decided that he's not going to be in touch with me anymore. And despite all of my efforts, just failed to respond to anything that I was saying or doing, or reaching out to him. And while on one hand the entire family unit was breaking up legally as well as socially, on the other hand, um, I would say even at the work that where I was before I transitioned to the corporate side, there was a lot of dissonance happening there. There was a huge shakeup, which actually led me to believe that this journey is over here. Surprisingly, I was going through a difficult time with my parents as well. Father's here, my mother's watching. We had a difficult time because I basically was questioning why was this happening to me, and I was looking at my own relationships with my family, and somewhere I was trying to find a place to put the blame on, saying that this is what led to me becoming what I am. So it was very strange, like you said, everything that I was I had believed until then was just falling apart. But on the other hand, there were new beginnings happening with my work, which I had no clue about how to do. I had never been part of a CSR of an organization, but what I saw was, in a new workplace, a lot of young people, and with no offense to people slightly older, I feel the youth and the young people there gave me, one is, it gave me a lot of anonymity. Nobody knew who I was, where I was coming from. There was very little judgment or bias. And second is, there was a lot of acceptance, love, and warmth. A lot of them would actually call me mommy when I was not doing any momminess with them, but it just came very naturally to me. And somewhere that void which was there of me longing for my son was getting filled up with these young people who were somewhere also looking for their own life purpose. So it was, two sets of people looking for that. And then through the volunteering efforts that we created along with my team, we realized a lot of happiness and joy that people got, putting aside their own worries and troubles. So it was like an epiphany happening for me. So while I was setting this up and seeing people find greater happiness and joy in giving back to people, I was doing that for them, and I realized this is my life purpose. Can I help people to look beyond their own grief, beyond their own life situations, and give back to somebody in whatever small way you can? And that really started my whole new mindset to work. So from probably a 50 or a 60 volunteer count, we went to almost about 3 or 4,000, if I'm not wrong. Across all the 7 locations, we set up a huge wave of volunteering for my organization, a huge team that I work for, and it was an extremely gratifying work. I would say that is what was giving me the energy to go on and on and on.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful. Ghazal, I just want to say 2 things here. One is that, going through a divorce and a separation itself is extremely painful. And for you, it was like a double whammy. You not only had to go through that, you also had to be alienated from your only child. So you were coming actually from a very difficult space. And then to move to this place where you say you found your life's purpose, is to get people to volunteer, to do something beyond just jobs, in a corporate, and to actually volunteer and be useful to other human beings. You say, it's your life's purpose. It reminds me of this anecdote. I mean, we often talk about this. Sometimes when you're walking through a dark tunnel and there's no light at the end of the tunnel and it's completely dark, and you still have to walk through it without knowing whether the next step is going to trip you over. You still have to go, and in such a situation, you become the light yourself. There's no need of any external light. You become the light, and then you decide that this is what I want to do, and you take the next step forward. And when you do that, the universe actually manifests miracles for you. And your miracle was, you finding out what you really wanted to do. You know, your life's purpose of understanding that people can actually do much more, can volunteer, can help others, you know, and not just be, you know, 9 to 5 people in a corporate who are just logging in and doing their jobs, you know, and getting yourself into the CSR division of companies. So it's amazing that through your darkness, you actually found your purpose, right?
Yeah.
You always do that. You know, you can only find purpose when you look in the right direction. And when we are looking at it from a very material point of view, that life is all about earning a living, life is all about buying things, life is all about accumulation of assets, then you are only earning a living. It's when everything is falling apart, and you ask why, you know, what is the meaning of life, and how can I live a more meaningful, purposeful life? That's when purpose arrives in your life. It's a beautiful paradox, right? Ghazal, on one side you were lost, and on the other side you were finding meaning. Both were happening parallelly in your life. Would I be right with that assessment?
Yes, absolutely. And I remember somebody in office telling me, "Ghazal, क्या कर रहे हो? IT कंपनी में लोग काम करने आते हैं, अपना 8 घंटा लॉग इन करते हैं, चले जाते हैं, कोई भी वॉलंटियरिंग नहीं करेगा भाई. There is no space for all this, time for all this." And I said that no, there is always there is a lot of joy that you get from giving back. And I think I was very blessed to find my boss and my immediate work environment and my team who believed in me and my crazy ideas about volunteering and starting a lot of initiatives. So while I, like Vani said, I was grappling with a lot of personal loss and pain, but I think this is what really kept me going.
I'll share a learning here before I pass it back to Vani, which is all of us go through loss. Some of us lose relationships, some of us lose businesses and money, some of us lose identity, we lose health, we lose a loved one. So all of us go through loss. Loss is integral to the process of life. But we don't accept loss, so we fight it. I remember very well, when we set up our firm, which went bankrupt, when we set it up with a passion. We set it up with so much love, and we wanted to be the #1 consulting firm from India in the world. So we had a global vision. And you know, when the bankruptcy happened and we had to vacate our offices, we removed all the material in the offices and took them into a godown in Chennai, in a small godown. And then after a couple of years, it turned out that we could not even pay the rent on that godown, and the landlord wanted us to vacate the godown. So I sat on the floor of the godown with Vani, and we were packing things away to give away to the kabadi wala. We were shredding stuff, and we found all the signages of the statement of purpose, the vision statement, the values, the mission statement, all of that stacked up. And the kabadi wala was tying them into a nice bundle to take them away. And my heart sank, and I said to myself, listen, if this guy is going to take this away and somebody's going to sully it on the street, and if I chance to see it, I can't bear to see what we have created going to seed like that. So we sat down and we ripped apart the paper layer on each of those signages. We ripped them apart. It was gut-wrenching. I can feel it even now. You know, a part of me actually died that day as I was doing that. And I leaned on the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not a great fan of the Bhagavad Gita, as in I don't know Sanskrit, and I don't like some of the English translations that I've read. But the essence of the Bhagavad Gita makes a lot of sense to me, which is it asks you, what of yours have you brought with you that you are crying over losing it today? What of yours have you brought with you that you're crying over losing it today? And it basically says that what is yours today will be someone else's tomorrow, and on another day, it will belong to yet another. And it concludes, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita concludes with this powerful line: this change is the law of the universe. So the loss is a process of change in the universe. Only if you lose yourself can you find yourself. And that's the beauty of what happened in your life. On one side, you encountered loss, and on the other side, you found yourself and your life's purpose. Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ghazal.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah, Ghazal, before we move on, I want to ask you a question specifically as a mother about your estrangement with your son. It's rather difficult and very painful, when you go through an estrangement with your only child. So, how did you cope with that pain? I mean, did faith and patience help you, or what happened? How do you cope with something like that?
Well, I think there is nothing that prepares you for it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming, and I think my relationship with my son was the only thing I was holding on to from that space of my life or my marriage. And when that happened, first of all, I was like Avis said, I was in denial. I thought he's angry. He's 17 years old. He's 16 years old. He's just angry with me over what has happened. But what I didn't realize was that estrangement is there to stay. So estrangement and alienation are two concepts which are quite interlinked with each other. So the alienation is a gradual process of fading away the memory of one of the parent done by the other parent. It doesn't necessarily come from the child, because the child has its bag of love for both the parents. But when over a period of time, slowly, psychologically, one of the parent is out to take away everything good from the child's heart and their mind about the other parent, is when the alienation sets in. So in my case, the alienation was completely severe. It was there. I was meeting him one day, and then that's it. I was hacked out from their lives in a split second the next day. Zero response. So for a long time, I kept hoping that it's just anger and it's going to be something that I'll be able to fight off, and I'll be able to talk to him, give him space. He's a teenager. But over a period of time, I realized that it just wasn't going away. And that's when the feeling of failure set in. And that feeling of failure, along with a lot of other things that were happening in my life, the fact that I was divorced, that I had to, now finally find my own identity, was bringing in a lot of pain, which I wasn't able to see was coming from the estrangement. So I didn't realize the estrangement is bringing in a lot of other dimensions to my personality. So
how did you deal with it?
So I think what I thought was that this estrangement here has to do with me being a bad mother. It has to do with a lot with something that I didn't do with him right, and I think I dealt with it very poorly. I have to say, it just shook me up completely, and it continues to do that. And I think I'll talk about it a little later when I talk about Milap. Probably share a little bit about it. But I think I did not have the courage to deal with the estrangement. It just really took away whatever I had. But I knew that, okay, this is also part of whatever is happening for your higher good. But I wasn't able to understand why my son would not speak to me. And I was looking for all the things that I had not done right and ascribing it to that. So, of course.
This is so painful because, I think what happens to us as parents is that, when a child is born, our entire identity becomes tied to the child, even in school, you're known as so-and-so's mummy. I've gone to parent-teacher associations knowing that this person is so-and-so's parent, but I don't know their name. You literally pour yourself into bringing up a child, and your everything is tied into who they are and what they become. So it's rather difficult to when suddenly one day you wake up and you realize that this thing is completely gone from your life. Spiritually, if you look at it, Khalil Gibran says this, he says that children are not born for you. Your children are born through you. They are not for you. It's easily said and done, but when something like this happens, it really affects you deep down. I was listening the other day to Amitabh Bachchan. He says, his father taught him a couplet, which goes in Hindi like this, which says, "Man ka ho to acha, na ho to aur acha." So he says he did not understand the couplet, and he asked his father, "What does this mean? When something happens which you want it to happen and it happens, it's great. But when something happens which you don't expect or you don't want, then it's even better." That's what the couplet says. So he says, how is it that it's even better? So it was explained to him that when something like that happens, the universe has got other plans for you, and therefore it is a good thing to happen. So, I mean, I know you're going to tell us a little more of how you coped with this and what you did, but these were the thoughts
I just wanted to share. At that point, one of my friends actually persuaded me to go for counseling, because I think I had been avoiding and denying that for a long time. It's the work that I did, or rather the counselor did with me, which helped me to completely accept the fact that I have been estranged and alienated from my child, which I was trying to run away by getting busy, by doing volunteering, by working really hard. And that moment was extremely painful.
That moment of acceptance.
Yeah, that moment of acceptance that this has happened to me.
But acceptance does relieve you of the burden, right? It can't lessen the pain, but the burden of suffering goes away with acceptance.
Yeah. So I think from there began a different journey of dealing with the alienation, and I think after a point of time there was not. I mean, I don't think it got better. It just got worse, because I was convinced that this relationship with my son is dead. So there was this relationship with somebody who's alive, but the relationship is dead. The person is alive, but the relationship is dead. And there's nothing on earth, because I have tried everything, and I was trying everything which I could do to get him back or to break that silence. And I was convinced that mother-son bond is gone forever. And that was extremely, extremely painful. Very, very painful.
But you went through it. You went through it because in life, often there are sometimes no available options. The only option in front of you is the one that you have to take. I want to add a couple of things, but before I do that, just as a time check, I'd like us all to remember that we need to be very sharp going forward to be able to cover this conversation. We're like 16, 17 minutes away from close. So please help here, Vani and Ghazal. Ghazal, I'm going to summarize your estrangement learning as follows. You're learning from your estrangement experience. I have a different experience where I have no chemistry with my own mother, and it has never worked between us. So it's interesting that you are sitting on the other side and I'm sitting on this side, and we have different views of the perhaps the same problem. And all I can say is that with acceptance, it came to me difficultly. I realized that it was going to be this way. And with acceptance comes a lot of inner peace. With forgiveness comes a lot of inner peace. You forgive yourself, you forgive the other person, and you accept that this is the way the construct of your life is. And if there are 99 ideal situations, the one exceptional situation has been given to you. And this is not only the context of a parent-child relationship. I think if somebody is having a physical disability, if somebody is having a financial issue like us, is out of job, somebody is having a serious health problem, I think whenever you go through a difficult situation, when you sit down and look at it carefully, the only way to deal with it is with acceptance. Acceptance is
Absolutely.
painful. Acceptance is comes late, but when it comes, it brings a lot of inner peace. And so that's the way I have learned to deal with it, and I'm sharing it with you. I'll
Absolutely.
move on. I want to ask you a very simple question. Keep it sharp. You were going through a very difficult time yourself between 2013 and 2020 now. You've been dealing with so much in the last 7 years. And yet, in these 7 years, you've created two very meaningful organizations. One is Bodhi for people dealing with painful separations, and the other is Milap for a support organization for people with, for custodial parents, for non-custodial parents. So how did you manage, where were you getting the inspiration to do something like this from?
Right. So I started Bodhi in 2015, and it came after a point where I realized that there is nothing in life which prepares you for a divorce, for a separation, for all the pain that comes from it. Nobody prepares you at home saying, Koi baat nahi, if you go through a divorce, this is what you will feel and what you will get. Nothing prepares you for it. And at that point, when you go through that loss of identity, you don't know whom to turn to, although you may have your family support. If you have a safe, unbiased group or a community or a network which understands and has gone through a shared pain, then maybe that is going to help you in this journey. You will not feel alone. You will not feel that you're the only one. And that is what the idea is, what started off with Bodhi. I was in Bangalore then when I started this group with probably one member on the list. And then when I left Bodhi, which was 2016, because of a rule that I had set in, which was that if you choose to get married, you have to move out of the group. So incidentally, Bodhi was where I met my current husband, Venkatesh, and we moved out of the group. It was almost 250 member strong organization, which was doing a lot of wonderful work in helping people across the spectrum who were going through separation and divorce. Milap happened much later in 2019. We just completed a year, and it happened because I was still grappling with with the estrangement. I was still grappling with the pain, and it happened at a point where I felt healed and I felt strong enough to work for people who go through a similar journey. It happened when I felt I can turn around this relationship and breathe life to it with the thought process that I have. I will reconnect with my son once again. And I realized that this is a phenomena which very few people knew about. I didn't even know the word estrangement and alienation about a year and a half back. And the initial phase of my understanding and research was very painful. When you realize this is what psychologically has been done to you, this is a WHO certified form of child abuse that your child goes through. It was devastating, but I realized that I now need to gather myself again and then help parents who are going through this. So that's how we started Milap a year back. And
So
now, yeah.
it's so beautiful. Your pain, your own personal experience has led you to living life purposefully, of giving yourself wholesomely and selflessly. Isn't it magical, people? I just want you to ponder over this. What you are today is always a result of what you have gone through. And some people, like Ghazal, take what they've gone through and put it out there for more people to learn from it. And that is the biggest blessing of your life, Ghazal, your ability to do that. Vani and I call this the useful versus successful paradigm. For us, we are struggling with matters of worldly success, and we said, but we can still be useful. And so, just as you set up Bodhi and Milap, we started doing these conversations. I wrote my book. We talk about inspiring happiness in every waking minute of ours. And so we understand this very well. And we know this is the reason why we are put through this experience, so that we can be messengers of what we are trying to communicate. In your case, it is about relationships and parenting. In our case, it is about happiness. So life always brings you to where you must arrive. There are no wrong paths in life. Today is R.D. Burman's birthday, and I can think of Gulzar Sahab, who said, "इस मोड़ से जाते हैं, कुछ सुस्त कदम रास्ते, कुछ तेज कदम राहें." This is from Andhi, from Gulzar's own Andhi. So there are no wrong paths in life. There, whatever you walk on is part of the life's design to bring you to where you must arrive. Is mode se jate hain. So it's so beautiful that life turns and takes you along, and it is your job to flow with life. I'll let you ask your question, Mom, and then I'll ask my absolutely last question for the evening.
Yeah. Very quickly, Ghazal, how do you let go of bitterness and anger when you have to move on? What do you think of things like forgiveness?
Yeah, I would second that question, because I think for all those who heard Ghazal today, you didn't find a trace. I don't think any of us found a trace of bitterness in all that she spoke. There might have been reflections of pain, but no bitterness. So that's an important question.
Yeah, it's an important question, and it's a very tough one. It's a question that I still am learning. I'm still a student of the school of forgiveness. I think, like you said, the first part is the acceptance, that when you really deep down accept that whatever has happened for your greater good. This book of your life would have not been where it is if had it not had all the previous chapters. That realization has actually helped me drop a lot of resentment and keep the good and happy memories in my life from my past. I think forgiveness has been a very, very tough decision, a tough battle, a tough lesson for me, and I deal with it even now. The most beautiful thing, if I had to sum up, is that forgiveness is here to teach me that if I don't learn to forgive myself or the others, then my son is not going to learn to forgive me. And I think there is no other Maha Mantra or learning that I can share more than this, because this is a realization which is very, very recently come to me. And I think that carrot that is there has helped me to slowly drop a lot of resentment and forgiveness and forgive people and my own self. So I think from something that I faced recently, I think this is going to be what I would like to share with everybody has really helped me.
Beautifully said. The fact is that no one really controls anything in life. And so, you're neither somebody big or in a position of strength to forgive another person. Only if you let go can you move on. Yeah. You said it so beautifully, Ghazal. Avis, it's all yours.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the whole journey of forgiveness starts with yourself, and I'm glad you see it that way too, Ghazal. I'd like to ask my last question for the evening, which is a tight, sharp question. What is your idea of happiness? Looking back over the last 10 years and looking at where you are today, what is your idea of happiness today?
My idea of happiness is being able to follow my heart, being able to follow a life of peace and joy, and be able to follow this sense of purpose that this entire last 6-7 years have given me, which is to work for parents who are going through not just alienation and estrangement, but also take the whole message of co-parenting into the wider world. I think as I see it, increasingly, I want to be in a space where, one, I can motivate people to look beyond their lives and give to somebody, even if it is an hour, if it's, if it's any skill that they can give back. Can we do it through our organizations, through our schools, through our society? And two is that if people do choose to separate, how can they give the children the best of both worlds, the best of their love and support? And that marriages, even when they end, they don't have to be bitter, they don't have to be acrimonious. It is, as Gulzar said once, when somebody asked him about his separation with Rakhi, he said, हम अलैदा कहाँ हुए हैं? We haven't separated. बस थोड़ा घुटने इधर हटा के बैठे हैं. So,
if you can get that perspective into everyone that's moving away, I think that's great. So that's your idea of happiness. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's been a wonderful conversation. I wish we had time for covering a few more points, but I think we did very well with the time that we have. You have been very from the heart, Ghazal, very authentic, very honest. I like particularly that flavor that you highlighted, saying you're still a student in the school of forgiveness. You're still
Yes.
a student with acceptance. We are all that, only that. We are all only students of life. Every day leaves us, with a new lesson, with a new opportunity to learn and to unlearn. So thank you. It was a very meaningful conversation, very grounded, very authentic. Thank you so much. What
Thank
I'm going
you
to
so
do,
much.
what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to just summarize. I'm taking that minute to get my biggest takeaway for the evening, which is really from Ghazal's story or from our story. You will find the parallel is that there is darkness and pain, there is loss, and then there is light, the light of enlightenment. Enlightenment need not happen under a Bodhi tree. Enlightenment happens when you realize that you have only this one life, and there is no point postponing happiness. There is no point postponing living a life of purpose. So that enlightenment, that light, the grace, the ability to live that purposeful life is grace personified. And the overall idea of being happy and thriving and moving on in life, just as Ghazal has done, just as we are doing, which is learning to be non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering. So all of this beauty has come into our lives only because of the darkness and the pain and the loss that we have been through. I'm reminded of the couplet by Nida Fazli, the Urdu poet, which was sung so beautifully as a ghazal, indeed as a ghazal by Jagjit and Chitra Singh. Please Google it. It's a fascinating ghazal. And Nida Fazli says, दुनिया जिसे कहते हैं ये जादू का खिलौना है, दुनिया जिसे कहते हैं ये जादू का खिलौना है, मिल जाए तो मिट्टी है, खो जाए तो सोना है, मिल जाए तो मिट्टी है, which means the world that you want to claim, that you want to conquer, is actually a magical toy. If you conquer it, you will find it worthless. You'll find it plain dirt, because you want more, you want something else. But if you lose your world, if you lose your identity, your wajood, if you lose your marriage, if you lose your health, if you lose your money, if you lose your loved one, with the loss comes enlightenment, the gain. You see the real treasure of life, and you realize that the beauty of life is in being happy despite your circumstances. The beauty of life is in being non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering, in being accepting, in letting go of anger, in forgiving life, in forgiving yourself, in forgiving others. So Nida Fazli says this so beautifully. Mil jaye to mitti hai, kho jaye to sona hai. So I think we have somewhere, all of us, those who have seen life up close and seen the pain and feel the pain, and all of you out there can resonate with this. I have discovered that magical golden treasure, which is happiness. So that's what I'm taking away from you, Ghazal, this evening, that you've discovered that pot of gold. And just as Vani and I have, and just as many other people will in their life. So people, whatever you're going through, please remember that it's with a reason. And you too can come up and tell your story and wear your life on your sleeve with acceptance, and with a celebration of the suchness of life. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to close in just a minute. I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and stay with me for just a minute, and then some pictures after that, some screenshots. I'm pulling up the slide that I'm going to use to show you the announcements that are coming up, the events that are coming up. Sorry. Give me a second. Yeah, let's try it this time. So what is coming up on July 1st is the Uncommon Leader. This time we have Kirti Jaikumar, who's got a very powerful story of facing abuse and bullying in life, and setting up the Gender Security Project, which is trying to create an equal world for women out there. And she's my guest in the Uncommon Leader series on July 1 here on Zoom. It's hosted by the Madras Management Association. If you're not registered for it, please register for it with us. And on July 25, we have the Bliss Catchers, our popular series, and we are in conversation this time with someone who could have made an amazing career as an astronomer. She's a qualified astronomer, but she embraced dance, her bliss. And a quantitative economist from Harvard, Palgat Ramprasad, he embraced his bliss, music. So Apurva Jayaraman, the dancer, and Palgat Ramprasad, the musician, they could have been astronomer and quantitative economist, but chose to follow their bliss. And we have that on 25th July here on Zoom. So please register for that as well. If you have not registered with us so far, you can register with us now. Our number is 98409. I lost that somewhere there. A number is 98409. Let me pull that again out for you. Please bear with me. Tech issues this evening. Yeah, 98409-78823. So that's the number on which you need to register for our invitations for our live, reflective, non-commercial programs. These are free for anyone, so please spread the word around. Please help us inspire happiness, and please stay in touch with us for our future programs. And now, before I let you go, let me repeat that we are having a very strong internet footprint. You can Google us, HAPPYNESSWALAS. Thank you so much, all of you. Wonderful, wonderful having all of you join us. Please stay on. I'm going to stop the recording now so you can all turn on your videos. But one last time, let me thank Ghazal once again from Vani and me. Thank you so much, Ghazal, for doing this amazing conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So I'm going to stop this recording